Lebanon, a country known for its rich history and cultural diversity, is facing an unprecedented crisis that has resulted in its brutal collapse. What transformed one of the most vibrant nations in the Middle East into devastating chaos? The answer lies in the shadows of corruption, which insidiously eroded the fundamental structures of government and society. In this video, we will explore how corruption became an entrenched system that facilitated Lebanon's deterioration and culminated in one of the most alarming humanitarian crises of our time. Imagine a country where resources meant for the well-being of the population are diverted into the pockets of the powerful. This is precisely what has happened in Lebanon, where nepotism and lack of governmental accountability have become the norm, leading to a devastating economic collapse and an increase in poverty and despair. It is crucial to understand this relationship between corruption and social disasters, not only to comprehend Lebanon but also as a warning for other nations around the world. If you are ready to uncover the sad truths about corruption in Lebanon and its consequences, join us for this in-depth analysis. We will unravel the events that led to this terrible reality and discuss what can be done to reverse the situation. To understand Lebanon's current crisis, it is essential to look at its past. The country was once considered the pearl of the Middle East, a thriving cultural and commercial hub. However, the civil war that lasted from 1975 to 1990 left deep scars on Lebanese society and its institutions. The legacy of this conflict shaped politics and the economy, creating an environment where corruption could thrive. After the war, Lebanon experienced an impressive reconstruction period, but the social and political fissures were never fully healed. The political system, based on a delicate power-sharing arrangement between different sectarian groups, frequently turned into a battleground for personal interests and corruption. Instead of promoting unity and the well-being of the people, political leaders often used their influence to enrich themselves at the nation's expense. Lebanon, once recognized for its advanced infrastructure and quality of life, began to show signs of economic decline in the early decades of the 21st century. Systemic corruption undermined investments and paralyzed public services, leading to a state of deterioration in vital areas such as health, education, and transportation. Thus, with a historical context marked by conflicts, a fragile political structure, and deeply entrenched currents of corruption, Lebanon was approaching collapse. The lack of trust in governmental institutions fueled despair among citizens, who watched their dreams and opportunities slip through their fingers. Corruption in Lebanon is not merely the action of dishonest individuals. It is an interconnected system that permeates all levels of society. For many Lebanese, corruption has become a normal part of daily life, affecting everything from politics to public services. Corruption manifests in various forms, including bribery, embezzlement, and favoritism for projects that benefit friends and family. The lack of transparency in public institutions has created fertile ground for corrupt practices, creating a vicious cycle where each generation of political leaders exploits the system to amass wealth and power. A notable example is electricity. For years, the Lebanese government failed to provide reliable electricity service to its population, resulting in long power outages. Instead of investing in infrastructure, billions of dollars were diverted into the pockets of politicians and private companies, which, in return, received generous and favored contracts. Furthermore, nepotism, the practice of favoring friends and relatives over qualified individuals, has become the norm. This not only erases meritocracy but also creates an environment where corruption is rewarded and competence is ignored. Politicians who should serve the public often become the biggest predators of the people's own resources. As corruption became entrenched as a system, the Lebanese people lost trust in the institutions that were supposed to protect them. This generated widespread apathy, where many felt powerless to change the situation. Over time, accumulated dissatisfaction became a ticking time bomb, ready to explode at any moment. Corruption in Lebanon has had devastating effects on the economy, with ramifications that extend beyond the diversion of financial resources. Instead of promoting development and progress, the corrupt system led the country to ruin, directly affecting the lives of millions of Lebanese. One of the sectors most impacted by corruption was infrastructure. The lack of adequate investments led to poorly maintained roads, ineffective public services, and a deficient transportation system. The economy, which could have thrived with these significant foundations, sank into a state of inefficiency and obsolescence. The result was a hostile business environment, where entrepreneurs faced difficulties operating due to the lack of trust in institutions and governmental policies. Moreover, corruption directly impacted the value of the Lebanese currency. In 2019, Lebanon experienced a dramatic devaluation of its currency, which plummeted from 1,500 Lebanese pounds to over 10,000 to the American dollar in a matter of months. This resulted in rampant inflation, making goods and services increasingly inaccessible to a population already facing hardship. The combination of failing infrastructure, lack of investments, and currency devaluation culminated in an alarming rise in unemployment and poverty. Today, it is estimated that more than half of the population lives below the poverty line, with many struggling to meet their basic needs. The middle class, which once sustained Lebanon's economic growth, is disappearing, leading to a deepening social crisis. Corruption, therefore, not only undermined the economy but also dismantled the social fabric of the country, creating a vicious cycle of despair and distrust that continues to deepen. With collapsing infrastructure and basic services failing to meet the people's needs, Lebanon was rapidly heading toward total collapse. In October 2019, Lebanon witnessed the emergence of a massive wave of protests, marking the beginning of a revolution calling for change. Tired of endemic corruption, degradation of quality of life, and economic collapse, Lebanese from all walks of life united in the streets to demand a better future. These protests were not just a reaction to the financial crisis. They were a cry of outrage against decades of corruption and neglect by political leaders. The protesters were diverse: youth, workers, professionals, and people from different religious confessions, all united by a common goal: the overthrow of the political system that had betrayed them. The so-called People's Revolts echoed across the country, and even the middle class, which once felt secure, joined the clamor for justice and equality. In the weeks and months that followed, pressure on the government increased. People demanded radical reform and accountability from leaders who had exploited the system for their own benefit for so long. The government's response was often violent. Security forces and military brutally suppressed the protests, but this only fueled the determination of the demonstrators. Although the revolution managed to effect some superficial changes in leadership, such as the resignation of Prime Minister Saad Hariri, corruption and entrenched inequalities remained unchanged. The political vacuum and the lack of a clear plan for reform left many citizens disillusioned. Dissatisfaction and frustration continued to grow, reflecting a society in agony, where hope became increasingly scarce. For many Lebanese, the revolution symbolized an opportunity to rewrite the country's narrative, but the forces of corruption still proved victorious. The struggle for change was far from over. The protests would become a symbol of the resilience of the Lebanese people and the urgency to eradicate the corrupt system that had imprisoned them for so long. The consequences of corruption in Lebanon are profound and devastating, affecting not only the economy but also the social fabric and daily life of citizens. The resulting economic collapse was just one of the many side effects of a failed system, leading to an alarming humanitarian crisis that has persisted for years. Primarily, one of the most visible consequences of corruption was the financial collapse of the country. After years of embezzlement and mismanagement, in 2020, Lebanon virtually declared bankruptcy. Banks were closed, and the population, who had entrusted their money to financial institutions, watched as their savings vanished. People faced the impossibility of accessing their accounts, and many struggled to buy food and other essentials. The humanitarian crisis that followed is one of the most severe ever experienced in Lebanon. Studies indicate that more than half the population is living below the poverty line, while unemployment reached alarming levels. Entire families are feeling the effects of degrading living conditions, facing shortages of food, medicine, and basic public services. The health of the population is no longer a priority. Hospitals and health centers are struggling to function, and many healthcare workers have fled in search of better conditions in other countries. Moreover, corruption fueled despair and a sense of powerlessness among citizens. Many Lebanese, exhausted and frustrated, decided to leave the country in search of better opportunities in foreign lands. The exodus, primarily of young professionals, has the potential to leave Lebanon without a significant part of its skilled workforce, perpetuating the cycle of stagnation and regression. The social consequences are equally severe. Sectarian divisions, which politicians often exploit, have intensified, creating a fragmented and polarized society. The lack of trust in institutions and the growing alienation only reinforce the idea that real change is almost impossible to achieve. Lebanon, once known for its diversity and pluralism, now faces the challenge of reconciling its people amid an identity crisis. Thus, the consequences of corruption in Lebanon are multifaceted and devastating, impacting every aspect of citizens' lives. A nation that was once a symbol of hope and potential now finds itself on the brink of abyss, searching for a transformation that still seems distant. Despite the severity of the situation, there is still hope for Lebanon, and recovery is possible, provided there is a genuine commitment to reform and transparency. The key to this recovery lies in several crucial areas that need to be addressed to restore the people's trust and reverse the country's devastating trajectory. Firstly, there must be a concentrated effort to eradicate institutional corruption. This can be achieved through the implementation of transparent and robust governance systems that ensure the accountability of public leaders. The creation of independent oversight bodies can help investigate and prosecute cases of corruption, ensuring that those who abuse their positions face the consequences of their actions. Additionally, rebuilding infrastructure is vital to revitalizing the economy. Significant investments in infrastructure projects can generate jobs and stimulate economic growth. This, in turn, will restore citizens' confidence in their institutions and show that the government is acting in the public's best interest. Quality education also plays a crucial role in recovery. Encouraging a new generation to engage in ethical practices and to have a critical understanding of politics and economics is essential to establishing a culture of accountability and transparency. Education not only prepares young people for productive careers, but also empowers them to be informed and active citizens in the fight against corruption. Lastly, active participation from civil society should be encouraged. Community groups and non-governmental organizations, NGOs, play a vital role in promoting reforms and advocating for citizens' rights. Strengthening these voices can create a unified movement for change and simultaneously pressure leaders to address the people's needs. While the path to Lebanon's recovery is challenging, mobilizing around issues of corruption, transparency, and accountability is essential. The country's future depends on its people and their determination to demand change, ensuring that the story of corruption that has plagued Lebanon does not repeat itself. The moment is critical, and the commitment to transformation can redefine Lebanon's destiny for generations to come.